Hello, everybody, and welcome to B2B SaaS Growth Day 2023. I can still see there are a lot of people still logging in, so we will take it very slow here in the beginning, making sure people connect to the sound and that they can see us and hear us and all of that stuff. It's great to be here, and it's great to see that so many of you are logging in, and very, very welcome. We hope that you are very excited for today. We are, because we have many brilliant speakers to look forward to. So really hope that you want to spend the 2 upcoming hours here today with us and our great speaking lineup. So my name is Cecilia Bylund, and I'm CMO at Brightvision. And together with me, I have Emma, that will be my co-host today. Hello, Emma.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Emma Kotka, and I work as Marketing Product Manager here at Brightvision. And as you said, Cecilia, I will be the co-host and the sidekick throughout the event today, and I will be helping out managing any questions that you may have about the technical details or any questions for the speakers and so on.
Fantastic. So before everyone has logged in and when we're warming up a little bit, we would love to hear a little bit, where are you calling in from? What city, what country? Brightvision is located in Gothenburg, Sweden, and we have employees all over the world and clients all over Europe. So it would be interesting to see if we have any fun countries and cities. So let's hear. Stockholm, great. Is it sunny? It's a beautiful Gothenburg today. The sun is shining, and I think the summer is around the corner. We have Västerås, we have Oslo, we have Finland, Helsinki, Gothenburg, Amsterdam. Wow, it's great. Not only Gothenburg then. So fantastic to see. Very welcome from all these beautiful cities and countries. Halmstad, that's great. That's where I studied, actually. Beautiful city.
Smilets by.
Yeah, definitely. But great to see. Very welcome. Let's move on a little bit. What can you expect from today's event? Well, what worked for your SaaS marketing in 2020 likely isn't going to work in 2023. Pandemic set aside, the digital landscape has changed dramatically over the past few years, making it harder than ever to generate great traffic and great leads. So that's why we have put together a panel of SaaS marketing specialists that can help you overcome your challenges so you can reach the success you want with your sales and marketing initiatives. So that's what we can expect from today. And for all our events, we usually have an exclusive event offer, and we have that today as well. So for the first 5 people to reply, either you scan this QR code, you go to the landing page, you submit the form, or you send an email to emma.kotka@brightvision.com. The 5 first to reply will get a free marketing growth workshop tailored for B2B SaaS companies. And it's worth 1,500 euros. So it's a very good offer. And you can also specify in what topic that you want to dive more into detail with if you get this workshop and talk to our strategists. And we have had many workshops like this before, and they have been very appreciated, and many of them has actually turned into recurring clients. So that's a good grade, I would say. So don't miss this opportunity, and hurry up, scan the QR code or send an email, and you might get to win this offer.
Exactly. All right, moving on. This is today's great speaker lineup, and their sessions will keep us busy until around 4 p.m. this afternoon. But I won't go into any details right here now. Instead, we will let the speakers introduce themselves. Right.
Hi, my name is Jillian Hartwig. I'm the head of marketing at Prezentor, and I will be giving you 4 tips to align your sales and marketing function to drive more revenue by introducing playbooks and how you can use them, targeted campaigns, intent data, and deal labs that will help you drive growth.
Hi everyone, I'm Maike, one of the project managers and the practice lead for our long-term client collaborations here at Brightvision. Come and join me in my session on bridging the gap between demand gen and lead gen activities. I'll make sure to bring you some practical examples that you and your team can start considering right away, including how to measure and actually show the value of your demand gen activities to the broader team.
Hi, I'm Jakob Löwenbrand and I'm the Managing Director of Brightvision. At B2B SaaS Growth Day, I will be talking about how you can use your data from the different stages in your funnel to optimize customer acquisition cost, or CAC. I hope that will be interesting. See you there.
My name's Jillian, and I'm super excited to join Brightvision's B2B SaaS Growth Day. I'm going to talk about all things revenue marketing. What is it? When does it make sense to implement? What are the benefits? As well as some of my learnings along the way. I hope to see you there.
Great. Thank you for that introduction, all speakers. It's going to be great hearing your sessions later on today. So, behind this event stands Brightvision, and we are a result-driven marketing growth agency that helps B2B tech clients grow. We work with all sorts of B2B tech companies. The logos you can see here are the ones everyone recognizes. But we do help all tech companies, from small startup to large enterprise. We have a niche target group, B2B tech, but we have a broad range of services. What you can see on the screen here, that we offer full funnel service offering. We have outbound, we have inbound, we do ABM, and we've been operating since 1999, so more than 20 years in business. And depending on our client's need, we put together growth teams with different specialities that can together meet the challenges for our clients. That's a little bit about us. And I think before we dive into the speaker sessions, we will have a little bit of a quiz time.
Yes, we will. So we're gonna do a little quiz where you and the audience have the chance to win a prize. If you're the first person to type the correct answer into the chat that you have on the right hand side on your screen. And the prize you can win is a nice coffee thermos from the Swedish brand Eva Solo. So let's get started. The first quiz question is, what is the name of Brightvision's podcast? Is it A, Tech Marketing Trends, B, Tech Marketing Mastery, or C, Tech Marketing Disruptors? I'm also going to type it into the chat so you have the question there. So it's the first one that gets the answer right. And I think it was the first person actually that typed into the chat. They got it right. And yes, Louisa, it is Tech Marketing Trends that you see there behind the blur. So congratulations on that.
You should tune into Tech Marketing Trends. We have more than 100 episodes out there, so really recommend it.
Exactly. I'm sending out a little link to the podcast there as well, if you want to check it out.
Great.
All right, let's move on to question number 2. Where is Brightvision's headquarters located? Is it A, Sweden, or B, Switzerland?
I might have given that away in the beginning here, but we will see if people paid any attention.
Yes.
Yes.
I think it was Elin Winberg. They guessed it right. Sweden is the correct answer. It is common to mix Sweden and Switzerland up, but yes, Sweden is the correct one. We are located in Gothenburg, south of Sweden. So yeah, congrats, Elin, and I think Louisa, I will contact you after the event for the prizes. And thank you everyone for typing into the chat. All right, so a few last event info points before we dive into the agenda. So for every speaking session, we will have a Q&A towards the end. So remember to type your questions that you have for the speakers, and we will bring them up towards the end. And you will find a detailed agenda with the times and everything in the right-hand side menu. It says handouts, and you will find the agenda there. And last but not least, it could be good to know that the event is being recorded, and it will be sent out to all registrants afterwards in case you don't have time to watch the whole event. And with that being said, I think it's well enough time to get started, Cecilia. What do you say?
Yes, finally, let's dive into what we are here for. So it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Julia Hartwig. Julia is the head of marketing at the sales enablement platform Prezentor. She has over 12 years of experience in developing integrated marketing strategies and creating complex marketing campaigns to drive revenue within B2B and B2C. Today, Julia will be discussing how to maximize SaaS revenue. So happy to have you here, Julia. Welcome.
Thank you. Yes, I'm very excited to kick this off today and to talk about one of my favorite topics, the alignment between sales and marketing. And I brought to you 4 initiatives that I suggest to align your sales and marketing function more closely, of course, with the outcome to generate more revenue and grow.
Great. Take us away.
So a bit on the agenda, the 4 points I brought today, as you also saw in the video before, is how to utilize playbooks to create standardization, how to implement intent data effectively, creating strategic campaigns, also to drive for consistency, and launching deal labs to create more innovation. Of course, I think standardization is a big part in driving sales and marketing alignment, and playbooks are a way that I found very effective in doing so. Of course, there are different shapes and forms that you can use to create that standardization, but my suggestion is using playbooks. So what kind of playbooks am I referring to? I typically, when I started a company, put this on the agenda for the first 3 months to create these playbooks. And the format I go with is, on the one hand, the sales playbook. And I think the sales playbook is a pretty normal part at companies, and most companies have a sales playbook. And what I think should be part of the sales playbook is outlined below, of course, the ideal customer profile, which I think is really important to base on your data and to think about who is actually the companies and the customers that are most successful and benefit the most from our product. So I tend to start out in the very specific and then rather go bigger rather than the other way around. Of course, a clear breakdown of the user personas and understanding their pain points and how your solution helps these. The value proposition and a clear overview of who is the buying committee and who is actually involved in making the decision to purchase the solution. And then also cadences as part of how do we want to reach out to our total addressable market? How do we want to reach our target audience? And on the other hand is the demand generation playbook. As you can see, both parts actually have, sales and marketing parts in it. So not one of the departments can create either of them on their own. But the distinction I make is that in the demand generation playbook, it is also a lot about the tools and systems that are being used and the different steps. So when I'm referring to the overview of the sales process, I'm referring to an overview of, no matter what terminology you use, I would say normally from lead to closed won deal. So really a clear breakdown, including the ownerships of who is in charge of each of these steps, the channels and activities, as well as campaigns that are being used, and then signals of when do we actually deem and say the criteria are met to move to the next stage. So what is actually our criteria from lead to MQL? So I brought an example. It's very, very small, I know, but of course you will get the slides later and can dive into it. This is just a very kind of high level outline. So the demand generation playbook we're currently working with at Prezentor is actually way more detailed, but you can see that it really breaks down each of the stages and also includes SLAs, and of course it can include a lot of details if you want to go that way. And what it actually does also as an exercise is to see, does actually everybody understand these parts? Do we all use the same criteria? Do we all use the same terminology on what we deem? So coming to the how do playbooks actually align sales and marketing? It is, of course, on the first hand, standardization, but also creating one true source. So in which system do we actually look when we talk about a certain part? Where do we track our opportunities and which numbers do we look at there? Ensuring that you have one language of, okay, this is what we refer to when we refer to an MQL. So everybody has the same understanding of it, as well as giving the room for optimization and scalability, because you can only optimize when you know what the best practice and the status quo is, and then of course scale it up. It also makes shared goals because everybody actually understands their part in the entire system and understands why is it necessary that I update these things in the CRM, which we all in marketing know sellers tend to maybe not do because it takes a lot of manual work. And additionally, it also makes a way easier onboarding process because there is go-to guides and these standardization guides everybody can look at and check what does the process look like. My second point is implementing intent data effectively. I mean, I think in this year, intent data is really a big buzzword and everybody wants to invest in it and get started with it. And of course, it makes a lot of sense, but it also needs to be done in the right way to actually get the most out of it. So the considerations I would suggest having before jumping into implementing intent data is to think about what is the investment versus what we get out of it. Because of course, especially talking about second and third party intent data, it is very investment heavy. So of course, you need to think about what are the things that we expect to get from it, and can we actually support with the resources we have to use this data in the right way. Additionally, of course, also the use cases. So how are we planning on using intent data? Is it just, then we use these intent data signals for SDRs to do cold outreach, or are we leveling this up and doing it in a combined way? And thirdly, what are the types of intent data and how do we intend to use each of them? So I brought a breakdown of how I see the types of intent data. First party intent data, I feel like a lot of companies don't think of as intent data because it is the data you collect yourself over your website and engagements and marketing automation tool, which luckily comes at the contact and company level, of course, depending on where they are in their buyer's journey. It has a high accuracy, which is really great, and a low cost connected to it because it is normally just data you collect within your systems as well. But depending on where you are in your demand creation process, it often comes at a lower volume. So, of course, the normal use cases is lead and account scoring, which I think a lot of companies are making use of. But it also gives you the option to actually track the entire buyer's journey. Of course, leaving out the part like the dark social part before somebody actually becomes a lead. But it gives you this option to track it throughout. And if you have a sales enablement tool, for example, you can, of course, also track the intent insights throughout the sales process and see how do actually prospects engage with the content that our sellers send out. On a second and third party intent data, it's collected via G2, for example, Trust Radius or Bombora, where it's engagements across the internet. It normally only comes on the company level data, which is a bit of a disadvantage because you need to know your buying committee very well to reach out to them effectively. Additionally, it comes at a high volume, which is great, but it also has a low accuracy. So you actually don't know what is the level of intent. Why did somebody visit our website? Is it actually intent, or was it another thing? Like, did they see a post on social media about a topic they found interested, but that doesn't actually say they want to buy the solution or are even interested in the solution. So I find the most effective way to focus kind of on the capturing demand. But that, of course, also means that you need to have direct competitors and your category already needs to exist. And that is a really big part of that. Additionally, you can, of course, increase the conversion rate by using intent data if you do it in a multi approach, and you don't just send it out on for cold calling, but you embed it in your inbound strategy or in your demand creation strategy. And another use case I find great is for customer churn reduction. So to actually see, okay, there are customers that are researching our competitors right now. So the customer success team is actually able to reach out proactively to make that conversation, and of course reduce the churn. So how does intent data align sales and marketing? It can help you balance between goals to check up on what are our short-term and long-term goals. So of course, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, and you have the potential to get these intent signals and to decide that, for half of them or for a certain part that research your specific solution, you target them directly, and for others, you use them for outbound. So in that way, you can combine outbound and inbound effectively. You can also bridge the gap between demand creation and demand capture. It can, of course, increase transparency. And again, it gives a really good foundation for optimization and innovation and trying different methods and different approaches to getting through to your target audience. The third point I brought is creating strategic campaigns, which is basically just me showing how I like to structure campaigns in this campaign framework. So how I normally divide out campaigns is having strategic campaigns, the first part, which are full funnel, always on campaigns. So they are used to both create and capture demand, and ideally generate 80% of your targets. I phrase this one very loosely because, of course, it depends on what your targets are. Most of the times it is still leads, so then it would be generating 80% of your leads. And that is because they are always on, so they are actually given the space to perform and for you to optimize them, instead of having these short pushes that never really reach the stage where they can actually get to capturing demand. And of course, they use all different content types available to really cater to various buyers, as we all like to consume different content. The second part is the tactical campaigns, which for me are these more short pushes. So they are either seasonal or regional or vertical specific, if you are thinking about verticalization, or segment specific. And their focus is on creating demand. And basically the capturing demand part is then covered by the strategic campaigns. And they ideally should generate 20% of your targets. And the third part doesn't have a specific target on your overall levels connected to it, because I call these go-to-market campaigns and refer to product launches or product updates specifically, which are also intended to create demand and have a very specific runtime. So basically, it's the go-to-market part of a product launch, and then it either becomes a strategic campaign and reaches that level, or it becomes a upsell or cross-sell product, depending on what your go-to-market looks like. I know this slide might be a bit confusing, but what I just wanted to show also in leveling the campaigns is that we have a specific naming convention connected to these campaigns. And what that means is, of course, that we get to track these different levels. So we have the tactical campaigns sitting under the strategic campaigns, and then different activities sitting under either the tactical campaign or the strategic campaign itself. And what that means in the sales and marketing alignment is that based on the briefs we share with the sales department, they know exactly what kind of content the buyer engaged with and how they ended up. So again, it creates this standardization and consistency. You have the possibility to, create demand and create a category by using these stable long-term campaigns that are full funnel, and of course also increase conversion rate because sellers are able to have more meaningful conversations. And the last point is launching deal labs. So what are deal labs? Essentially, for me, they are working groups that have different skills and different experiences that collaborate to innovate. For me, the ideal size is between 4 and 8 people, and each participant should come from a different function, covering the essential functions of a company. And the use case I see most of the times when getting started with this is, of course, to turn an opportunity into a closed deal. So most often you would use a must-win opportunity. The deal that then gets briefed by the account executive who has the most insights on on the deal itself and the stakeholders involved. And then the opportunity you would normally choose is, of course, either an enterprise deal or an opportunity that has a big strategic advantage for your company. So, for example, from a new segment or from a new vertical that gives you a good proof point to enter this vertical. And what you get out of these working groups is, of course, that you can get to use all of the collective skills and knowledge to solve this problem. And then, of course, if you win the deal, increase the revenue generated because you create better customer experiences. Additionally, you get to test new approaches on a smaller scale and see if they work, and then have the opportunity to implement them as a best practice. Oftentimes, leaders think that doing something like this is a high time investment, which it of course is, but the outcome for me exceeds the time invested because it's also very motivating for different team members to work together and align the teams through having a shared goal on a very specific project instead of this overall business goal that, of course, everybody is striving towards. So that was that from me.
Great. Thank you so much, Julia. Great presentation, very straightforward, and I think we can learn a lot from it. So if you have any questions for Julia, please type them in the chat, and she will make sure to answer them. I have a little question on what you talked about in the beginning about creating the playbooks. I think that sounds like a really good idea, but like how do you get started with that, and how big of a project should that be? If you see my question.
I'm sorry, I have an audio problem, so I don't have any sound.
Oh,
yes, I'm very sorry.
Okay. That's weird. But can you read the questions? You see the questions in the chat? I'm writing to Julia just so she can see the question in the chat. She should be able to see the chat. That's interesting technical issue. I don't think we have experienced that before. Okay, but I think
I'm sorry, I can't see any messages in the public chat. In the public chat either. The last message is from 1401.
1401. Okay.
I would love to answer your questions though.
So let's do it like this. We collect all the questions that you have, and then we send them in an email to Julia, and we can get back with answers afterwards. So it seems like it doesn't matter if she has full screen or do anything, because I think her internet connection has cut out since 201. So with that being said,
okay, yes, I just got a question sent. Fantastic, thanks so much, Dennis. So the question is, in your experience, what are some common challenges that companies face when trying to align their sales and marketing teams? And how can they overcome these challenges? I think one of the main challenges is that it has to come both ways. So, of course, top leadership needs to pave the way of having this alignment and needs to see the benefits, because, of course, it is an additional time and resource spent, you could say, of sitting the two departments down together, because ideally that happens at every level. So that happens from CMO to CCO, as well as from performance marketing manager to SDR or AE. So I think a lot of times it's that is a bit of a problem. That is not created, and additionally, it also comes down to the people itself. And I can say that from the marketing perspective, when I started working closer with the sales department, I got a lot of tough feedback because I got a lot of, oh, the leads are shit. I'm just gonna say it as it is, and this is really difficult to take because you know what you're putting into it and the thought, and that it's well thought out. So of course, the starting point is very critical, and it also means that both parties, of course, have to be respectful and sometimes also take their own pride a little bit down to pave the way of understanding each other.
Great. Thank you for that answer. Even if you don't hear me, I wonder if you see my other question too. Let's see. Okay. No, she went away. Yeah, that's smart, Dennis. Type direct message to Julia. That you will see. But I think that we can continue with our next speaker. Emma, are we ready for? Fantastic! Great. So, can you hear me, Maike?
I can hear you. I understand everything that's being said. So that's good.
Fantastic. So we are moving on to another very exciting presentation today. Next up on the agenda is Maike Zimmermann, practice lead and product manager here at Brightvision. Maike is leading our retainer practice, focusing on ensuring efficiency and smooth workflows. And she also helps our B2B tech clients grow with result-oriented marketing. Very welcome to our virtual stage, Maike.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I would say let's jump right into it. As you mentioned, my session today is on bridging the gap between demand gen and lead gen. I think that today's session is going to be most helpful for people that are considering doing more demand gen, or you may be already doing some, but you're struggling to really prove the value. So we'll briefly go over the what is what of demand gen and lead generation, how we can bridge the gap, and how to actually measure and showcase the value of the work that you're doing. So let's jump right into it and briefly talk about how they differ and why you should be doing both in our humble opinion. So some of you have maybe already seen this simplified graph somewhere else. So when speaking about the differences, for us, it's usually worth noting that demand gen and lead gen, they just follow different time frames. So with lead gen, it is generally more of a short-term strategy that can generate results fast, even when around 97% of your market isn't actively buying. And yes, I do understand why that's an attractive outlook. But in the long run, if that's the only thing that you're doing, you're just capturing, it doesn't scale and it likely produces diminishing returns over time. Also, if you've ever tried doing lead gen towards a cold audience, you'll know that it's incredibly difficult and just likely not as successful as your ambitious MQL goals might require. So the problem that we see a lot that companies run into is that they look at demand gen in the same limited time frame that they do with lead gen. So, and at the end, the efforts, you end the efforts before you succeed because it's frustrating that you're not seeing or can't really measure what's happening. But as I said, demand gen is more of a long-term strategy and it shouldn't replace your lead gen efforts. And usually when we start doing more demand gen with some of our clients, we see that it can take up to 1 to 2 quarters to work, potentially even a bit longer if there isn't some foundational elements in place like clearer KPIs, proper tracking, or good collaboration with sales, as we just heard from Julia as well. So the reason for that, and also the differences, is that it just takes time for your buyers to move through their journey. It takes time to move from problem aware to prioritizing solving their problem, even to becoming solution aware, getting into your sales cycle, staying there, going through all that process, and then finally purchasing something. So what we recommend here is to find the right balance between capturing the demand, it's a bit more short term, and then creating demand, which is a little bit more long term. Then again, of course, depends on your on the stage of growth your company is in. So I brought this model with me. It's called the bow tie model, which we occasionally use here at Brightvision to visualize the buyer and customer journey in a simplified manner. And as you can see here, we move from totally unaware of their problem to my right, to getting to know your brand, developing demand, understanding what your brand is about. You have the sales cycle just before the purchase, and then, and I think this is particularly relevant for any SaaS companies, a journey after the initial purchase, which is often owned by customer success. So speaking about demand gen versus lead gen, how we like to distinguish, like a rough rule of thumb, is that demand gen focuses on more ungated or free content distribution to build your brand, to build a solution awareness with your target audience, with your ideal customer profile or profiles. And I know it's a bit of a debate in the marketing space, but we do think that sometimes in order to get started with demand gen and really convince your management to buy in, and also if you have a high content quality, you can include some gated assets in the demand gen as well. I'll show you some examples in a second. So to summarize, demand gen is more of an awareness play. Lead gen is more of a direct response oriented kind of activity. And as you can see here also in the bow tie, like both have a certain degree of overlap. Both should be part of your larger marketing strategy. And coming back to this gated versus ungated content, it isn't the only way to distinguish what you're doing. There's also always options to, for example, show content, have it ungated, but then offer a downloadable version behind a short form. When I say short, I mean like 1 to 2 to 3 fields max, perhaps. Before we move on, I also just want to point out that you can use demand gen, for example, to upsell or cross-sell, or raise awareness about a specific new feature or product or service that you might be offering. So that's sort of for the right-hand side of this bow tie, which sort of comes after the initial first purchase. So, but to give you some more practical examples, let's talk a little bit more about how you can actually build more demand gen onto your lead gen activities. It's just our assumption that most companies start doing lead gen before they do demand gen because, well, for reasons that we all know, it's sometimes easier to approve a form fill than any of the demand activities that might be going on. And what we see, though, is that for many marketers, demand gen is all about running ads, likely on LinkedIn, to ungated content with the occasional maybe thought leadership, events, blog. And I'm not saying don't do these activities. Please do these activities. They should be part of your demand gen mix, but they're not the full demand gen strategy. So in order to actually build a full demand gen strategy, you really need to define how your customers are searching, learning, and buying. And of course, one way of doing that, especially if you don't have a lot of insights into, for example, your website traffic, how your MQLs behave once they are in your database, our recommendation is to speak with sales or speak with the customers directly if that's available to you. And another reason why I brought this slide with me, just to visualize a little bit like all the different activities that can be part of demand gen, is that, as you likely know, there are so many studies regarding how many touch points a B2B buyer needs or a B2B buying center needs to sort of move through their journey. And independent of which one you look at, one thing that I all agree on is that it's plenty more touch points than just 1 or 2. So of course, if you're only offering some blog posts and 1 or 2 ebooks, it'll be really difficult for you to achieve those multiple touch points and then stay on top of mind. And when we speak about demand gen, the other issue that we see marketing teams run into is that having content isn't good enough. Producing content isn't good enough. If few people consume it, you're not going to be able to achieve your goals really either. And the harsh truth is that likely nobody will pay attention to your offer or your content unless you start attracting it. So one reason why we see companies try maybe some of these activities that you can see here on the slides and then often quickly pivot back to lead gen or demand capture only is that these activities won't work if you're just filling them up with information about your product or your company. And again, it's a very common mistake, but we should instead focus on helping the audience that you're speaking to help solve their issues, which again, you need to understand what are their actual issues. When you look at the examples here, you'll also see that many of those are, and I'll come to that in a second, are a bit easier to track than simply blog posts or postings on LinkedIn. One reason is that most of them are interactive. Some can even be considered playful. And another reason why you also should use demand gen next to demand capture is that in most cases, there's no correlation between content downloads and purchase intent, and they shouldn't be treated directly correlated. I mean, if a buyer is really interested in your product and they really want to go and do a demo or speak to sales, it's not that hard to find the contact us button on your website. I hope it isn't. So to sum this up, there are 3 key considerations that I'd like to share with you. So one is enable a rep-free buying experience. Rep-free means sales rep-free. As you might know, a very large chunk of the B2B buyers prefer to do their own research and learn about the different vendors and companies from either recommendations or high quality educational content. And that's just no growth hackers or lead gen agency will help you change that status quo. That linear funnel, the gated content, MQL, sales outreach will lead to revenue. It just won't help you hit your revenue targets anymore. The other thing is remove friction. I know I could hold a webinar about each of these 3 points, but what I mean by remove friction is that really scan your website, optimize the navigation, make sure you have a clear, prominent CTA, simplify the form submission, and I'm aware each of these can, depending on which other teams are involved, be already a project for a couple of months in its own. But if you're really fair about it, how many people will be willing to fill out a form with 9+ fields just to get a mediocre ebook? Another good idea is to, for example, have more content ungated so the users can then actually start to estimate how valuable some of your gated content might be. And then last one is fix your tracking. I'll elaborate on that in a second, but we still see that many companies aren't clear on what they want to track, what they want to report on, and then how they track it. So really think about what is an engaged user, what behavior shows intent. And I get it, marketing attribution, especially in B2B, is a beast. It will take time. But then again, it's also no excuse to not get started with it. But as I mentioned, fix your tracking. So let me elaborate a little bit on the measurement and tracking aspect of demand gen. So how do we actually measure demand gen efforts? So you probably won't be surprised. As a consultant, it is my job to say it depends. So, but generally, we can say that there is a balance between reporting on reach and impressions, generally often considered vanity metrics, and reporting on only form fills. So that's why I showed you the examples earlier. Many of the suggestions are more interactive content pieces, like, for example, a maturity assessment that could be even promoted as a quiz, or the calculator to assess the cost of service and so forth. It just gives the users more ways to interact with your brand versus I read a blog post and then I speak to sales. That's quite the jump. So just sort of filling that gap a little bit with some content can actually be helpful and will actually make you able to report on engagement metrics rather than just impressions, for example. So also for the qualitative signals that you see here, so these are just some examples that I wanted to bring with me. Again, not all of them might be applicable to you. Some of these you might already be reporting on. And I just want to clarify that here I am separating content engagement and actual intent triggers. So sometimes I know that from a lead scoring point of view, a lead or contact look like a no-brainer for sales. But if the lead is showing interest, it doesn't mean they're showing purchase intent. And if that's the case, it'll be really difficult for sales to move forward. And again, as Julia mentioned, you get to the situation where sales is unhappy with what marketing is providing. And I know sometimes the difference may seem subtle, especially if we're measured on how many people we just send to the sales department. But in the end, intent leads to more fruitful sales opportunities, while interest leads to, well, frustrated sales reps likely. So again, start by assessing what indicates interest and what indicates intent for your company. And as mentioned, there are many tools that can help you with intent data and insights, but there's also a lot you can already do with the tools that you might be having. So when we move on from that and we say, okay, we have intent data, or even if you can't have it, if you don't have any of these tools and you can't start with them there are probably plenty of reasons, and you're struggling to measure anything from social media, for example, there are also plenty of insights that you can already get from the people visiting your website as well. You can, for example, assess, okay, what's the increase over time on direct and branded traffic through your SEO efforts, through your direct channels, if you, for example, use Google Analytics or other measurement platforms. You also have the increase of visitors to particular key pages, or even better, an increase of engaged users to your key pages, like, for example, a pricing page. I hope you have that ungated, or a comparison page, or any other pages that your company, sales, or your team would consider as, okay, they're showing intent and learning more about us. Of course, traffic can also be anything from how many people are actually signing up for your product, how many people are downloading your assets and such. And coming to the third stage sort of tracking, the following metrics that I'll speak about, they are the most difficult to track, maybe, but also the most relevant. I don't believe this is what you need to have in place to prove the value of a demand gen pilot. But of course, if you want to run a more long-term demand gen programs and consider this part of your marketing activities or even company activities, we do strongly recommend to look into some of these. If we, for example, look at some of these metrics that I have here on the third stage, they are the ones that help you connect your efforts to the company's bottom line. And mind you, that's not just a job for marketing. Many of these metrics require that sales and customer success or account managers, so those teams need to be included to measure some of these as well. And again, that's then sometimes a push that has to come from management. So generally, our recommendations when it comes to tracking demand gen is how much do you contribute to your company's revenue, to your company's sales. And as I said, if you're seeking to get leadership buy-in, focus on how your demand gen strategy or work can actually impact the following metrics that I put on these slides, like on the third stage. So for example, we have some that are maybe a bit easier to track, which is increase in lead quality. Again, this will require you to speak to sales depending on your setup. And if you're already hearing this and you're thinking this might be an issue for us, then yes, do be careful about just starting a larger demand gen activity push, because you will need their feedback sooner or later to really prove that what you're doing is actually beneficial for the company. So there's very little value in increasing your lead volume if the lead quality doesn't increase, or you don't know if it increases. So there are some others that are connected to lead quality and speaking to sales or building some sort of marketing and sales alignment is the qualification rate. So the percentage of MQLs that then become SQLs. You, of course, also have anything that's maybe more sales metrics, like the average deal size. You have customer acquisition cost, which I am very well aware is a very complex metric to track sometimes. Of course, you also have something that is a bit more long-term and really requires to have a more elaborate setup, which is the customer lifetime value. So how much profit can you expect to make on average per customer from subscription services, potential upgrades, downgrades, and so on. And I know that these aren't the traditional key performance indicators you might be accustomed to with leads and strategies. You're not just tracking leads or clicks or impressions. Instead, with demand gen, we would also like to start tracking metrics that actually have a tangible impact on the business. So when you ask me then, where do we start? Start with the basics. And I know this is easier said than done, but don't get overwhelmed by not being able to report on, for example, customer acquisition cost or customer lifetime value if you're just starting out. So these metrics, as I said, they really need this cross-team effort. It's not just on marketing. And I understand that there are also plenty of reasons of why you might be one of these companies or teams that is not doing this as much as they could, even though you know that this is important. It could be anything from the lack of data governance, quality control, as we heard, sales, maybe not putting in the information in your CRM as well as could be done. Of course, lack of expertise can be another reason. And I also want to point out that we at Brightvision know that good marketing is inherently not fully trackable. Anything that is like word of mouth, referrals, while they are some of the most important ways that a potential customer can be informed about you and your solutions, is also that they're almost impossible to track unless you actually have that conversation with the client. So in order to get started, we recommend taking small steps. If you've watched any of my other webinars that I did here at Brightvision, I keep mentioning the walk, crawl, run approach, which is very true for any new initiative that you are doing. So really assess what tracking and reporting tools do you already have in place. Like, are you using your Google Analytics, your Hotjar, your Clarity, you name it. Assess if you're really using them to their fullest capabilities. And of course, I know the ideal outcome would be that the marketing team is part of a larger revenue team, that you're all working together with sales and customer success. And I know this sometimes can be a bit of a wishful thinking, but that's of course the long-term goal that we would have. Last point is that I would also like to add that when it comes to reporting and measuring demand gen, it's so crucial that you conclude like a hypothesis, that you make a hypothesis. If we do this, we expect this to happen, and then look at your data sets and assess, did it work? Yes or no? If not, do we know why? Because from there, you can then dive a bit deeper into the numbers to then actually confirm, did this work? Yes or no? And actually test and build from there. There's no point for you to start reporting on all of these metrics or even more that I just showed you if you're not really going to use it to optimize your entire marketing and customer experience. So that was all that I will fit in my session. So, but if this was interesting to you, or if you have many more questions, I know we might have a few minutes for Q&A, but also feel free to reach out to me directly. You can also scan this QR code and potentially win a free growth workshop with our team, based on which we can give you some more targeted recommendations, and not just it depends. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Maike. Very good presentation. I think you gave us all a lot to think about. And if you have any questions for Maike, please type them in the chat. You can hear me, right?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm now trying to open the chat, see what I can see.
Yeah,
yes,
great. Can I just start with a question that I got when you talk about like this cross? There is a cross function, and this should work like between many teams. Like, how can we effectively collaborate and align our demand and lead generation activities with the sales team? Like, how do we do it? How do we set up ourselves for a collaborative success?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I'm probably going to give a very similar answer to what Julia did earlier. Why is it important that sales and marketing start working more towards on with each other? And as I mentioned, like, whatever marketing is doing, especially when it comes to generating demand, which I understand is difficult to measure, but one way of measuring it is looking at the lead quality, the speed at which customers move from maybe SQL to customers, when they move from MQL to SQLs. And those are often metrics that maybe you already have access to them in your CRM, but it can be helpful to speak with sales and see. So that the hope is also that even if customers come to you, like by the time that they come to sales, they should be a lot warmer. And that's feedback that you can only ever get from sales directly, because they're having the conversations with your clients. And it can sometimes be as simple as setting up regular meetings with your sales team members, or maybe one of the senior sales team members that can share the feedback from the entire team.
That's great. That's a great tip. And I can see that we have some more questions here. What are your suggestions towards tracking traffic in regards to the cookie banner?
That's one of the topics we discuss with our clients a lot. We have one paid specialist who will hold an entire webinar just about this. I think it depends very much what cookie banner you use and what data you want and don't want to track. I know that with GDPR, there is often that you're just losing out and tracking a lot of traffic. So I need to know a bit more what kind of cookie banner you use, how you have it set up. But yeah, I totally understand that can make it difficult to track some of the traffic. But even then, there are other ways. You don't just have to look at your website. You can also look at some of the metrics that you might have in your CRM system or that you might have on your social media platforms, ad platforms. So you don't only depend on maybe any rules that are imposed on you legally.
Great. Great answer. Thank you for that. We also have a question. Do you have any specific tools or technologies that you recommend that can assist in bridging the gap between demand generation and lead generation in the SaaS industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are many. Again, I think we never recommend, start using tools for the sake of it. But there are even a lot of capabilities with the standard Google Analytics tools or Hotjar, Clarity, Heap, which can help with analytics or heat maps, so to just see a little bit more what's happening on my website. We have some that can help with more interactive content like playable or rock content. We internally often use Unbounce for landing pages and just give you more options to also make a bit more interactive design, test a couple of more messaging, see what actually resonates with your audience. And then, of course, any intent data tools like Lead Feeder or similar that can help with your overall strategy.
Fantastic. And one last question here, I think we have time with. What key metrics or indicators should we focus on to evaluate the success and impact of the alignment of demand gen and lead gen activities?
I think it's a little bit on the previous slide that I showed. There are some, here we go. These are some metrics or indicators. There's, of course, always a bit of a qualitative aspect to it that, again, will come through if you speak to sales and see what's happening in their conversations. Are people maybe bringing up that they have heard from your brand through this or through that person or channel? So I think these are already a good starting block. And mind you, like these are all just add-ons to what you might already be tracking. So, looking at demand gen and lead gen, you're probably already having a handful of KPIs for your marketing activities. So don't abandon those. Just think a bit further than form fills so that you don't reduce your own marketing function to only that.
Great. Very clear answer. Thank you so much, Maike. I don't think we have time for any more questions today, but if you want to get in contact with Maike, feel free to contact her.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye. Great. So moving on in the agenda, we will keep going here. So we'll see if we can get him on camera and sound as well. Fantastic. The next speaker, hi Jakob. The next speaker to present is the CEO and founder of Brightvision, Jakob Löwenbrand. He has more than 20 years of experience in B2B tech sales and marketing. And today, Jakob will be sharing his take on data-driven marketing and sales for B2B SaaS growth. Welcome to the virtual stage, Jakob.
Thank you, Cecilia, and hi everybody. So good to be here again and joining from home here today. So I'm going to talk about data-driven marketing and sales for B2B SaaS growth, as Cecilia just said here, and I hope we will share some insights over the next 20 minutes or so here at the webinar. So, my name is Jakob. I founded Brightvision 23 years ago. So I've been doing, and actually I did freelancing for 3, 4, 5 years before that as well. So I pretty much have been working with tech marketing, B2B, helping B2B tech companies grow in one way or other around marketing and sales since the late 90s. So yeah, that's the only thing I know anything about pretty much. So I will share a little bit about that today. And that's why Brightvision is all about deliver growth for B2B tech companies. And we really like to help tech companies bring their innovations and systems and solutions to the market and help them spread them, as well as grow their companies and their revenues. And just instead of just splurting out ideas or insights, I actually thought today to maybe tie them back to quite a big case we had over the last 18 months we have been working on, where we helped a small legal tech company going from pretty much a newly developed product without any revenue to million SEK, Swedish kronor, in monthly recurring revenue over pretty much exactly 12 months. And we did a lot of mistakes. We also did a few things right during this journey together with client. And so I'm going to try to use that framework a little bit. So what we did basically is that we set up a growth team. And growth team is an offering where we tie together many specialist roles in one team, working together tightly with the client, and almost interact as an in-house team, even though we're outsourced or so. And we can have that in many different areas. But for this client, who was a legal, and we can tie them on also starting up with some roles and so forth and going forward. But this client, they had pretty much newly developed SaaS offering within the legal tech industry. And if you know the legal tech industry, it's driven by regulations, deregulations, or new regulations coming into play. And when those regulations come into effect, it usually needs to be served quite instantly. The process is usually that the regulators, the governments, and so forth within EU are taking those decisions, and everybody gets a heads up for around 6 or 12 months. Hey, companies, you need to have this in place within a year or a half year or before the 1st of July or something like that. And that's pretty much it. They have to adapt to that. Otherwise, there's usually fines or other complications going to happen. So it's a good industry to be within. But of course, it's also a lot of competition, a lot of players in there who want to profit on these regulations and things coming into play. And it's a big market, since EU pretty much adapt to the same regulations, or at least tries to do it, and also tries to roll it out quite similarly. Big markets can open up very, very fast. And that was one of the things in this case that made it both challenging and fun, but also very, very quick to develop. So what we did was to put together a growth team with pure outbound focus and inside sales focus. We had BDR and SDRs doing the prospecting, and we had a lead research and data team supporting with the companies and contacts and warming up data and so forth. So we had good segments to work on for the BDRs and SDRs. And then we had the ISR team, or some companies call them account executives. We call them ISRs, inside sales reps, doing the demos and presentations, sending over the contracts and closing the deals and negotiating the price and all that. And so that was the setup. And after a year, starting at the end here, after 12 months, we had done a lot of trial and error, setting up stuff, since the client was in a hurry. They didn't have a sales and marketing structure in place. So we had to build everything from scratch together with the client. And we had 14 people in the sales team. We had sales teams in Sweden, Finland, Germany, and France. Both BDRs and ISRs was outsourced within the different countries. We had a great leverage of the data and lead researcher team, as well, increasing sales at the last quarter. That looks really good. But it wasn't a straight line from the first month to the last, let's say, over these 12 months we will look into. We started out really, really fast, since we wanted to get up and running quickly due to all the regulations that came into play, and wanted to profit from a first mover or an early mover advantage. But this was pretty much the sales curve over these 12 months. As you can see, we started out really, really good. And then we hit some problems. We needed to adjust, realized everything wasn't that simple. We met competition, and we started to get up to speed again after a while and so forth, and went and closed that 12 months period really, really strong. And I will share a few of those insights with you in regards to data-driven and analytics of a sales product for SaaS. So first things first, if you want to use data and be really good at this, you need to build your speedometer, or at least establish some kind of measurable KPIs that gives you an insight on if it's going well or not. Are we going up or down? Are we crashing or are we flying? And we did that. We started doing that as soon as possible, but it probably took a quarter before we actually found the right measurements or get the dashboards up and running as we wanted. So definitely something that we can learn from. But I would say it was probably pretty good. We also had different systems to start with, since the client didn't have all the systems in place. We tried a few, and after a few months, we had a really good setup there. And one learning that we have done over the last few years is that the bow tie funnel is working really well for B2B SaaS and sales products or marketing products if you want to have a model how to measure stuff around these processes. As you know, if you have come across this, you know that it's Winning by Design, who have been visiting us a few times on our virtual events and talking about their different processes. It's a really great bow tie funnel where we have the acquisition funnel to the left, and then they have added on the expansion funnel from the commitment or decision or the buy purchase moment in the middle there. So you can say you have the lead gen, demand gen, and the sales to the left, and the customer success, upsales, cross-sales to the right. And a really good funnel to use if you want to have well-defined metrics. And if you don't have these in place, I can encourage you to look into this, because they have well-defined definitions for the most stages here. So what they've done is, of course, define from a quantitative perspective how many MQLs, SQLs, and the different definitions of the outcomes from the different phases. But also we have the time where it takes, how long time does it take for an MQL to turn into an SQL or a book meeting or so, and into close. And then also the conversion rates, as you can measure. It's 7 or 8 measurements here, depending on what you, if you do the whole thing or not. But you should maybe not go for the full model at once if you haven't an advanced system set up already in place. Also, a few concepts here that we refer to: CAC, client acquisition cost. I suppose you know these one. LTV, client lifetime value, MRR, monthly recurring revenue, ACV, annual contract value. So those were a few of the things we measured and tried to track quite closely by having all these metrics set up in our systems. And what this gave us was a data-driven decision environment where it was easy to set up hypotheses and try different things. And I think one of the things we did really good this year was that we wasn't afraid to try new things. We constantly tried, mixed, matched, implemented something, took it back, tried something else, and so forth, until we actually got a KPI to move in the right direction. But quick decisions and a lot of hypotheses that we tried, since we were running very, very fast. So by also using well-defined metrics, we could agree to that we were looking at the same stuff, that we actually measured the same thing, because that could be actually a very basic but still very, very common problem. That no, it's going great, we have a lot of stuff coming in through the pipeline. Yeah, but it doesn't convert. We are not sending out any proposals. What's going on? Yeah, but we have a lot of good dialogues here. So you probably have heard all of these anecdote-based discussions where it can be very hard to understand, are we going in the right direction or are we crashing? Because you can always find a sunshine story in any sales team, and you can have, oh, everybody is so positive, we have a lot of things going on, we have great dialogues, things are moving along, but the metrics are saying something totally different. We are not closing anything. We did only sent 2 proposals last week, and we're actually declining on 2 key metrics here, and so forth. So yeah, you need to be aligned around which metrics actually depend on, and if if it's hard to get an understanding of it's going good or bad, we typically say as the pilots, if you don't trust your visual, trust the instruments. You need to understand if it's going up or down by looking at the dashboard. Otherwise, it's not giving any value. But keep things simple. Don't measure everything at once. So if you're starting out as we did, focus on the 3, 4, 5 most important ones and nail them. So everybody report in the CRM systems at a good way, so we can at least get them to work and line run them. And then we can, of course, make it more advanced as we go. Okay, a few potholes here that we realized. We had a really good start. We started ramping up reps, and we started to close business and had maybe a little bit hubris after 1 or 2 quarters there, where we saw revenue increase month after month. Yeah, man, we're killing it. We just continue to add people and start up new stuff and things, and here we go. Then we maybe got a little bit sloppy. We increased the price a little bit and changed some of the term sheets and things like that. And suddenly we felt that we were a much bad situation. So one learning is be very careful increasing price before you have a moat. And with a moat, I mean competitive advantage that is actually sustainable. Sometimes we talk about sustainable moats or temporary moats. We had a temporary moat for the first 4 to 6 months, where we were probably the first player, at least one of the first. And before people and companies had understood that there are a number of players out there they could choose from, and actually they just bought from us because we came in the right second. They needed a solution. They heard about this. Yeah, sure, let's go. It wasn't that expensive, and so forth. But by switching a little bit of that, but at the same time also several companies came into the game and starting competing with us more fiercely, we realized that this is not a walk in the park. We need to look into this, and we had a bad trajectory there for quite a few months after that before we picked up speed again. So you need to understand if you have a sustainable moat, do you actually have something that is hard to compete with before you demand a 3-year contract or increase the price, or say no, we only have 20 seats minimum and things like that. And that is something we definitely are not recommending, because if you go out high and do the enterprise sales level, high price, you have longer sales cycles, low close rates, and high churn risk. And if you instead go the other way, the opposite is true. And what we did is that we found ourselves with starting out with a low price, very aggressive pricing and easy contracts, and no, it's fine. You can only buy 1 year, and if you don't like it, sure, and so forth. To turning up that volume to way too much. And then we had way longer sales cycles and lower close rates and things like that. And we needed to adapt to that. And that costed us like half a year or so, or at least a quarter of really bad results. Another pothole, scaling team too fast. As you understood, after the very strong start here, we started scaling quite fast. We added people to it way faster than we should. And I can probably say that this is one of the definitely most severe mistakes you can do if you're in a startup or small SaaS business. I would say adding too many sales staff to your startup before you actually have a sustainable mode, or at least a repeatable sales process that you can trust, can kill the company in no time. And we ran into a few of those problems, not severely, so we needed to shut down anything, but we went way too fast at one point there, and we needed to slow down and go back a little bit and redo it and do it right, so to say. So be careful how to add, so you actually know that you have a repeatable model that you can add to. So I would say hire one rep at a time, add one person at a time. If that person starts to get profitable, add another one. And if that person gets profitable, add another one, and so forth. And when you have done that 3 times, add 2 at a time and see, okay, is it still, working as a system and as a model? But adding like 6 persons at a time and just, hey, here you go, good luck, that didn't cut it. So we needed to take it a bit slower there. So slow and steady is much better than fast and chancing. And one of the things we realized is that when you scale, you need to also think about where are we in the process of which phase we are, both at the market as a company. 2 things to consider here. Your solution belongs to a market category. In which phase is that market category or product category? And we were somewhere early market in the beginning here, and then we started pitching to the more established companies, which I would say being CrossCast/bowling alley, and that is also much harder stuff. But you should also think about where are we as a product team or product offering. Are we if you're in the early market and you just come to the market with your solution, you need to find the visionaries and you need to win them pretty much at any cost, just to get references and get their product feedback, so you can start establishing some kind of references, but also understand if you're solving anything of value or not. When you go for crossing the chasm, you need to have some kind of product market fit, and that's a very broad definition. What's a product market fit? Well, you need to solve some kind of important problem for at least one niche segment of early majority customers. And when you come into play in that phase, you need to focus on customer retention, because if you don't keep your client, then it's hard to build anything sustainable and so forth. So I won't go into every area here, but what I think is important here is not to optimize the CAC and start scaling the sales process too early, because we might have looked into this too much and thought it was a scalable business model while we still were working with the visionaries and getting some early market traction here. But you should not think that is the majority market that is buying from you now. These are the people who wants to try new technologies and wants to be the ones early to buy or adopt a new technology or a new system, so they can brag about it for their peers. But that is a very small market, and it dries up pretty quickly. So you need to understand where are we before you start scaling and thinking everything will just act the same way all through. A few things we did really well that helped us a lot was that we started to analyze our best reps very early. We saw that we have great result for some of the reps, and we started to, as always in sales team, is a good way to do to analyze and see what they did and train the other ones on that. And you can use tools for this. If you don't use it today, maybe Gong.io could be a good tool. It's an AI tool that listens to calls and gives you the characteristics of a sales calls and so forth. For example, they typically talk about that 42% in discovery calls, a top performer is doing the talking, while a mediocre or a low performer do 72% of the talking. And that can be very, very different. But low performers usually talk way too much, and so forth. So you can measure them on that and build your playbook around those insights. And we did that. And also we started to very early build on an e-learning platform called LearnStir, the playbook. So when we brought on a new rep, they were up and running in a week, getting everything in there. So we onboarded them really quickly and process defined and so forth. So everybody had the same information, the same pitches, trained on the best practices, which always developed. That is also why we train them every 3rd month. Everyone, even though the first ones and the ones have been on we train them continuously and updated them on the processes, since we learned so much so fast, since it was a new team and a new product. Also, after a year, when the recurring sales started showing up, just a few comments on that. It didn't go bad, but I would say that it can be a problem for many SaaS companies. What we see today in SaaS, as you know, is that customers are buying way too much licenses than they use, and in average, customers are only using 50% of what they buy, and that pisses clients off, basically. Of course, if you pay too much, why should you keep the system? And everybody is wondering that. So it's important to try to understand that you are solving a problem that is worth the investment, and not try to oversell them just because you can. And this is a problem for many sales team, which usually are heavily compensated on new client sales and less, or at least the same, on expansion sales. And I think I've seen several SaaS companies and heard a lot of stories about companies focusing more on the expansion sales side and being extremely successful, and that could be something that might be interesting for SaaS companies to evaluate, to see if that could be something good to do as well. But one important thing is to find an early anti-churn early indicator, and that was something we talked about. But how do we understand if the client will continue and buy the 2nd year and the 3rd year and so forth? And every SaaS company probably have some kind of indicator, and there are some famous example in this area. HubSpot usually talked earlier that if they got a client to use at least 5 tools in their marketing suite, they knew that to 90% they will keep the contract for the next year or so. But if the client only used 2 or 3 tools within the first days and didn't get into it and didn't utilize the system, or more used it as a very expensive email marketing tool, they will pretty much cancel it to a majority of the cases. So what's your indicator? And if you only look at the churn rate, that's a very lagging indicator, way too lagging. So you need to find a proxy for the churn early on, so you know early, are they engaged in our system? Are they interested in using it? Or how can we understand if they actually feel that we're solving a problem and getting their bang for the buck, so to say? Very important for SaaS companies to understand. That was a few insights that we did over the last year. And what next? Well, it's enforcing and improving on the functions here. We have the BDR and the prospecting team. We have this ISR and the sales team, but also adding now the customer success management team and working with the expansion phase and that pipeline. So yeah, a lot of stuff going on, but very interesting case, and I'm happy to discuss it more in detail if somebody wants to have even more anecdotes from this case. And so multidisciplinary growth teams, that drives B2B growth for B2B tech brands. That's pretty much what we do. So if you're interested, contact me and I'll give you a rundown. Okay, Cecilia, that was pretty much what I had prepared for today.
Thank you so much, Jakob, for taking us through this. Very, very good. Much to think about. So if you have any other questions for Jakob, please type them in the chat. I've got some questions sent to me here. So if you can conclude, like, what would you say were the biggest success factor to why the case here you took us through, why it was so successful? Like, why did it, what were the key ingredients, the main key ingredients for its success?
Yeah, I think we had a pretty good offering and we got out early, and that was one of the things. The other thing is that I think this company was understanding that it would take a long time for them to build their own sales team and start learning that, since it was a small startup, but had financial resources that they could outsource their sales process the first year. And we ramped a team very, very quickly. And by doing that, we also learned a lot. And learned in a high pace, even though it costed them to some extent when we over ramped, as I talked about, for a few months there. But on the other side, we did solve those problems and came out on top after 12 months. So I think it was a well worth investment. But I think getting established salespeople on the project early on, learning stuff and establishing a process for the things there. So even though we went very fast for a new product, for a small company, we had very little chaos going on, which is probably a silent killer, even if it doesn't appear so. I think chaos or confusion shows up in many small and quick moving companies, and that can be a hard problem to tackle. But I think we did a good job handling that.
Great, thank you so much. And one more question here. How can companies with limited resources and data expertise get started with data-driven marketing and sales? Are there any low-hanging fruit that you can start with to get these quick wins?
Yeah, sure. Well, you can always start implementing Winning by Design's KPI, so you at least have that and read up on it, and or another framework. There's many out there, of course, that you can choose. It's very similar to the HubSpot awareness, consideration, decision, and so forth. So, but starting laying out the foundation, set it up in a system, and install the discipline for the salespersons that you use and the marketing you potentially have. So at least the data you populate the systems with is aligned with the KPIs and the project. And pretty soon you can see trends and tendencies there. So that gives a good foundation. So if you have a capital injection, or you for some reason just hits a better, bootstrapping potential, you can scale faster and quicker and do less mistakes going from there. So yeah, just start there, I would say, and implement some kind of system for following up on the right KPIs.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I can see that our next speaker is ready to go on the virtual stage. But thank you so much, Jakob.
Thank you.
If you have more questions for Jakob, please just reach out and we make sure to forward them. Great. So moving on in the agenda, let's see if we have her here, Jillian. So next up, we have Jillian Els, VP Marketing at Tricent. With over 15 years of experience in global B2B marketing, Jillian has been working with SaaS startups and scale-ups to build marketing teams focused on growth and revenue. Today, she will talk about how you can drive B2B SaaS growth via revenue marketing. Welcome to our virtual stage.
Thank you so much, Cecilia.
Whenever you feel ready, you can just take it away.
Perfect. Well, hi, everyone. I've now been introduced, I guess, twice, and I will introduce myself one more time just to give you a little bit of context, but I'm very excited today to talk about revenue marketing. You know, I think it's been a great segue. I've been watching the presentations so far today about talking about going from lead generation to demand generation and this alignment with sales. I see revenue marketing as the culmination of all of that, and I'm here to kind of walk you through that. But just a little bit on my vantage point, so you know where I'm coming from. I have worked in B2B for over 15 years, but specifically in B2B SaaS for over 10. I've been in startups where I was employee number 10 to big corporate and enterprise. My sweet spot is definitely scale up, taking all of these amazing creative ideas out of startups and then starting to professionalize them, scale them to make them more repeatable over time. So currently I'm at Tricent. I'm going to share with you today some of the experience I had at Moncito, which got merged with another company, became Optimir, and then got bought by Civic Plus. So I've definitely been a part of a lot of M&A and all of that kind of change that brings. So that's where I'm coming from. I want to talk to you about how I define revenue marketing. Everyone could potentially have a different perspective on it, but I wanted to give you mine and the benefits I see with it, when it makes sense to implement. So I'm already alluding to it's not for everyone. And then just some practical ways that I've implemented it in the past, just to give some learnings, and then a framework that maybe if you're interested, you could work with to get started. So my definition, not if you Google, of revenue marketing is it's the evolution of marketing's role to support the modern buyer journey. So what do I mean by that? The modern buyer journey is different, right? It's really complex. It's not linear. This is a slide from Gartner here. You don't need to worry about if you can see what's on it. It's illustrative in its own right. It's just showing you how many different stakeholders and touch points there are and back and forth. So it's complex and it makes it super difficult, right? So the more complex your sales process is, the more difficult it is for buyers to buy your product. And it's not necessarily one side's fault or the other, but I don't have it right on hand, but I think there's a statistic out there saying that 40% of closed lost deals are just simply indecision or just keeping status quo because, hands up, it was just too difficult to kind of get through the process. Also, there's more millennials like myself in the workplace than ever. We don't like talking to people. I think there's different statistics out there, but 57 to 70% of B2B buyers have done their research phase before they want to get in touch with sales. So it's getting harder and harder to connect with people earlier stage. So you really need to think about the value you need to provide so that people are well educated before they get to you. And this means marketing is taking on a really big responsibility for the sales process. It's no longer just the lead generation part or the hand raises and then handing it over. You saw that first graphic with all of the different arrows and underlines and back and forth. Marketing is involved in all of those. So it's no longer this, here you go, sales, you go. It's, here you go, we've got this person that's ready to buy. That's the demand gen, right? We've gotten them further along in their buying cycle so that you're only talking to them when they're ready. But we're going to continue to help you figure out how to close this deal with the right product content or the touch points that kind of help with social proof or whatever it may be to accelerate those deal cycles. This is one of my favorite memes that Samuel from Dream Data has created. I think it is so true that there is just so much work that goes behind a deal these days, and that's where this evolution of marketing has come in. So what to do? And now I feel like, ooh, we've seen all of these bow ties, and here I am with a funnel, and I might even say flywheel at some point, whichever model you're using. The idea with revenue marketing is aligning your revenue team between sales, marketing, and CX for that matter, across the customer life cycle. So from awareness to promoter. And that's actually missing in this. I just Googled this image. That's missing in this diagram, but really what it is that it's a team effort. It's a team kind of notion on these deals to close. That's why I love Julia's example of the deal labs. I mean, that's a lot of it. And it's running campaigns together and potentially looking at your SDR or BDR outreach a little differently. So it's not just booking a meeting at all costs with whoever has a pulse to, offering value and maybe not having that ask right away. I mean, it comes a little bit back to this idea of, okay, not everyone's ready and we need to kind of be okay with that and figure out how we can measure the impact of providing value before the ask. So we've kind of come in this evolution of marketing as a cost center, lead gen, gate everything. Sales reaches out to anything and everything, or just hits a magic score in your marketing automation platform, and voila, it's ready for sales. And then we've got demand gen, who is looking at, or this strategy, if you will, is really looking at, let's make sure that the 5% of the people that are in market, that we're doing our best to capture them, and the 95% of them that aren't in market know who we are and understand these pain points that we're addressing or the category we're looking at. And then when they are ready to address that your company is the one they're thinking of. And then revenue marketing is really about chasing the dollars and the metrics that, or the tactics that get the most results the fastest, and helping from the awareness side all the way to upsell, cross-sell through the customer journey. And there might be some overlap with demand generation. I would actually make the argument you need both. This is my really poor drawing skills here. It can get a little blurry. I'm not going to get caught up in how you would design it specifically. I'll show you how I've done it. But I'm not saying that, okay, you did demand gen, check, go do revenue marketing. No, you still really, I believe, need that demand gen component. So if anyone knows me or has worked with me before, I can't let a presentation go without a 90s hip hop reference. So our kind of team anthem, if you will, is Biggie Smalls Get Money, because that is the focus of revenue marketing. I do realize this ages me, and there we are. But it's the true integration of marketing and sales teams. It's emphasis on this measurable outcomes, and that's revenue. We're a revenue team, and it's like maybe from a semantics perspective, talking about SQLs more so than MQLs. I don't lose sleep over losing MQL goals. I would lose sleep over losing or not hitting my SQL goals. And that's really the power of revenue marketing, is you're learning by doing, and you're focusing on the things that are going to drive the ultimate deals through. And it's that full funnel ad, because you don't just stop once you're going from one stage to the next, whether it's from lead to qualified lead to opportunity to sale to expansion. So that was my kind of definition. Now let's talk about the benefits. Maybe, of course, clearly more revenue, but specifically the things that I look at with the revenue marketing function is acceleration in deal velocity. So how are we closing deals faster with the right people? It should also generate higher ACV, because you're customizing the experience for the customer, not for your organization. So they've had a great experience. You're not going to have to discount, hopefully. Your ICP better. You've spoken to their pain points. They see the value. And then ultimately also higher NRR, because it's this full cycle focus. And as a revenue function, we also need to understand how can we grow and expand our companies. It's a big part of, if we're talking B2B SaaS, a part of your valuation. So it's something that needs marketing's touch and can't just be reliant on CX and your account managers, from my perspective. I've said it a couple times, I've alluded to it, but yes, it creates a better customer experience. I find that B2B SaaS, Jakob's example showed you exactly that there's a low barrier to entry with software. So if you don't have a competitor now, I promise you'll have one tomorrow. What makes you win this moat, if you will, I think personally, is this customer experience, because people buy from people and people stay and build relationships with people. So if that's the way to win, like this is a marketing notion that supports that, because it removes the friction and makes it about the buyer and not the company. And then more efficient, right? So if you're looking at revenue goals and growing it, you want to make sure that you're doing everything you can with every dollar you have. This might seem like, yeah, we're always doing that. We always want ROI. And any marketer needs to raise their hand and know that some have better ROI than others. And it's just, sometimes it's a necessary evil to do that mix. You can't just put all your eggs in one basket, but ultimately a really smooth revenue marketing function will provide higher ROI on the overall marketing investment and reduce your customer cost of acquisition. And even better sales and marketing alignment. That's been a theme as well in this B2B SaaS Growth Day. So I think everyone can agree now it's no longer nice to have, it's kind of table stakes. And I said even better because I do think you need a certain level of sales and marketing alignment before you can implement revenue marketing, which alludes me to when does it make sense to do this? I don't want to say that every team is ready for it, because if you are early market and you're trying to figure out your product, like you need to be as creative as possible, the growth at all costs, the kind of get the customer at all costs. This is where you need your big ticket ideas and commitment. And it's not really that stage that you want to think about revenue marketing. You want to look at it as you have a really well, tightly defined ICP. Great if you have great content for it already. You're at least the beginning forms of predictable, repeatable, scalable revenue, which kind of means that you have processes in place. You likely have a good tech stack and operations resources. You do need this kind of relatively good foundation between a sales and marketing relationship. And like I mentioned, you do need a tech stack for that source of truth. That's been mentioned a couple times. Julia focused a lot on that. But in order for these handoffs, so to speak, to not really to be the smooth process, if you will, and for marketing to be able to assist the whole funnel, like your systems really need to talk to each other, and you really need experts to make sure that the people that are providing that value aren't the same people that are trying to figure out a tech solution. So I'll talk a little bit about the team, the revenue team that I set up at Moncito, because right now I'm at Tricent. It's an amazing company, but it's really early stages. So I'm not thinking about revenue marketing right now. It's just a passion I have. And when Brightvision reached out on what I might be able to talk about, I thought this might be a great thing to talk about. So in that reference, I'll talk about Moncito, which then I think I mentioned earlier, merged with a company. We created a brand called Optimir. And ultimately got acquired, but this was a great revenue marketing story that I could tell. So actually when I stepped into the company, I think it was about 6 marketers based out of Copenhagen, but most of our revenue was sitting in the US and Australia, funny enough. So we had this like marketing function in Denmark that no one really understood. And I brought someone from my previous team over, and at the time, I think her title was revenue marketing manager. I just knew that she could speak my language, we could run, and we got all of our processes in place. She had a lot of, I guess, maybe traditional field marketing responsibility on her belt, including partner. But then we grew this team together, and really ultimately she took over it by hiring revenue marketers then for each kind of main region. And then we hired one, she shared kind of the US just based on scale with one in revenue marketing manager in the US as well. And then they split that by ICP. So industries in that instance, she focused on the public sector and the hire focused on commercial. And then there's always an argument of whether or not you can hire customer marketing too late or too early. I would say we probably did it a little too late. Not too late, that's wrong, but we could have benefited by doing it earlier. Let's put it that way. But that customer marketing person also became kind of this glue between product marketing and our customers as well, and getting those case studies and reviews and all these things. That social proof is so important to drive that flywheel faster, if you will. But it should also note that this wasn't the only team. We had a really great marketing operations person who did all of our MarTech stack. We also had sales ops helping us on the Salesforce side of things. We had a product marketing manager. We had people working on content design and written forms so that, they could come up with ideas. Our revenue marketing team could adapt it for sales cycles, for personas, for the different industries as they need it. We had performance marketing, or whatever you want to call that. I think the actual titles were kind of search marketing specialist and website specialist. But that was kind of, the ones that were focusing on conversion rate optimization, getting the ads in place. But ultimately it was our revenue marketing team that held the budget and said, I need to grow this, these are my goals, this is my persona, and here's the budget. And then our paid specialists worked on meeting those goals. So it's not its own entire, it's not the marketing team in its entirety. It is in some ways in that it's leveraging the resources in some of the other roles of marketing, but it was definitely the ones that were closest to the revenue, if you will. I won't spend a lot of time on these slides because I think I'm going a little slower than I originally practiced, but also because it's been talked about a lot and you're going to get these slides afterwards. But these were just some of the ways that we practice sales and marketing alignment, focusing on transparency. This is a screen dump from the internet, but we did use Gecko boards, so I could pull from different tech stacks to give us one visible kind of dashboard on the KPIs we were aligned on. We also, of course, had meetings, the world of meetings, but no, I mean, my VP sales was like my bestie, if you will. And I think that's really important coming from the top up down. And then my revenue marketing team had weekly check-ins with their local sales directors and even their SDR teams we had stand-ups with in the different regions once a week, and really made sure that we kept communicating openly. And then just some random things that I put into this slide that I wanted to share some other things we did. We made sure that marketing attended live or watched a demo once a week, at least one a week through Gong. We also used Gong for our product marketing launches to make sure reps were talking about the products in the right way, learning from our ICP. What do they say when those, as Jakob showed, the reps that don't talk a lot, then you get so much data from the customers who are talking, right? So that's one thing I could highly recommend. We had an open kind of request form that integrated directly into our Asana workflow. So if sales was like, I really need a one-pager about this, or someone else in the company had an idea for marketing, it could be dropped right into our project management system. And that was just a way to show that we, I think we're there to serve, but we're also there to come with the ideas ourselves. It's a balance, but we wanted to make sure that the best ideas, they can come from anywhere. We're getting recognition and getting into our workflows as fast as possible. We did team-based competitions, so like sales and marketing together, funny ones, but go out to dinner together if we met our goal. We did quarterly team building activities. One thing we didn't do at Mancito anyway, but have since done at Tricent is a call day where at least marketing, but in Tricent we did the whole company, did some cold canvassing. I think that helps align a lot on respect for sales. I have not, in case anyone has found the equivalent of how to get sales to understand marketing a little bit. So if you have any ideas, feel free to put them in the chat. I'd be willing to see those. And well, what did it result in? I mentioned that I came into this team as about 5. We grew it to 12 people. We went from sourcing 20% of the revenue in the US to 60% as marketing generated. We grew in ICP revenue 70% year on year. We had a 20% increase in our ACV and reduced our overall sales cycle by about 30%. And it was actually even faster for the marketing sourced. And 15% NRR growth, which is not nothing if you're familiar with NRR. So I'm not saying that, I hope you understand that. Yes, this is a lot about marketing, but this is a team sport, and that's really what drove it. And this is us all celebrating in Boston. On the downside, or maybe some of the things we learned, you need to compensate marketing driven versus cold call driven the same. We did it differently in the start, and we changed it really quickly because especially if you're working with the US market, it's so incentivized by money that you can't make one worth more than the last, the other. I also need to help my revenue marketers not chase AEs and SDRs. They got very passionate, which was great, but that's, not a great use of time. And then some of the other ones that weren't wrong or anything. Like, we didn't really figure out whether we needed a dedicated inbound SDR versus distributing it. We tried both. Both were okay. It just kind of felt like we didn't get the perfect mix of that. There was some blurring of lines in the role of product marketing versus revenue marketing, because both have kind of sales-facing objectives. Found that people just gravitated to the people they had the best relationships with. So that was a little bit of a challenge in terms of making sure that everyone got the right information at the right time. And we tried some social selling initiatives because we had a commercial persona and we were so aligned in sales and marketing. We thought we would, rock it. It was okay. It didn't do great, but it was just some of my things that I ran through. And then the framework, I'm going to go through this fast, but basically to get started, got to make sure you're ready. Do you have your ICP defined? Do you have a pretty good marketing plan that's like built on a forecast that like shows that you understand your buying cycles and your seasonality? When you're going to events and your sales cycles, so that you present plans that are achievable, of course, ambitious, but to help continue to drive that alignment, that's really important. Then together with sales and CX, map that customer journey. Bring your RevOps person, make sure that if there's any friction points that you remove them. And then align on the goals, right? So make sure you're sharing some KPIs. Marketing will always have additional KPIs, but like, we need to talk about, if we're going to talk about meetings booked, great. And we're also going to talk about how many good meetings were held, right? So that we're all aware of that and we know which sources drive what, and we can continue to iterate and get better on that. And then run. So I think the whole crawl, walk, run, this revenue marketing is about running and really working with your partners in the commercial organization to accelerate whatever opportunity for growth you can find, and take those learnings throughout the organization and make sure that you're just hyper-focused on driving that best customer value experience across their journey with you. And then no brainer, but continue to measure and optimize. Since you'll get the slides, you can have that. And just to recap, it can be a game changer if you do this right. The US basketball reference, alley-oop, is about setting up a layup so someone can dunk it. That's marketing, is getting us that far. So sales just needs to kind of get it through the nets. It's certainly not for every company stage. It's definitely for a kind of later stage company, but it's fine for scale up for sure. And like any good relationship or any good strategy, it requires work and iteration. So it's not set and forget. But that's what I had, and really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jillian. Great presentation, and thank you so much for all your personal example. It was very easy to follow and to understand and adapt. So thank you so much for that. And we have some questions for you that we will take here. So let's start with a question from Benjamin. And he wondered, what are your best tips for balancing the need to drive revenue with the need to build brand awareness and establish thought leadership in the SaaS industry? So balancing the need to drive revenue.
Yeah, you need both. I think, because that's what I was saying about demand generation and revenue marketing. And in my example from Uncedo, I had other marketers working on some of these things. I am a big believer that if you optimize this customer buyer journey, you are going to build a great brand. But of course, you need to have a focus for it. Our content, like I said, they weren't just a supporting function to the revenue marketers. They very much had the intention to, build thought leadership, to build and educate the market on their own kind of KPIs and stuff. So it is a balance. I think it's a good question because you can get so obsessed by looking at the numbers. I'm guilty myself. I can live in Salesforce if someone let me. So that's why it's about hiring the right people to keep you on the right track, working with a visionary, either CPO or CEO, whichever that kind of role is in your company, really helps kind of keep that balance.
Great. Thank you so much for that question. And do you have any advice on the perfect tool stack? What tools do you think can be beneficial to be successful?
I've learned that I've been a Salesforce shop my whole life, and then I walked into Tricent and it was HubSpot, and I was like, oh my God, I don't know how to use this. I've learned that it's fine, and I have not screwed anything up yet. But I do think obviously you need a really strong CRM, automation platform. Gong's already been mentioned. I think it's a fantastic tool for marketers, not just for sales. I really enjoy it. If you're working more enterprise, if you want to look at more kind of intent data, that's also really important. I think it depends on your stage. Are you category creating, or are you in a busy market to differentiate? But obviously, I would say strong CRM, automation, project management, that's really important for marketing. I'm like organized chaos, so I try to hire people that are much more organized than I am, but that really helps. And I open up like now I'm on Monday versus Asana, but I open that up for all of leadership and for the rest of the organization if they want to see where marketing's at with things. So that's another big one. And then of course, depending how digital your strategy is, or if you're working with a lot of media, like a really good video platform is also really important. I could go on, but I would say
but it summarizes very good, I think. Thank you so much. But I have to ask you, like, how do you see? It's a question on many people's brains right now about AI and marketing, and how to use it, how to be efficient. Do you have any thoughts you want to share around that?
Yeah, I don't think the robots are taking over anytime soon. I've seen examples where you can be very iterative with ChatGPT to kind of get value out of it, but I've tried to use it and I get frustrated with what it writes. So I'm like, I think people still can differentiate good content, but absolutely use it and leverage it for like no-brainer tasks. Like sometimes you get asked, like, can you write a job description for what you do? I totally asked ChatGPT to do that because it's something I could spend a lot of time on, but didn't really need to, just to check a box for the people department. Sorry if they're not online. And there are some really cool things that are happening in terms of other software. So not just for content creation that I think are really cool, especially in design. I mean, there's still those, I'm not talking about the AI images where suddenly someone has like another extra thumb or something like that, but being able to kind of work with, some inputs in order to get like a quick graphic out. Like that's really helpful, especially for early stage companies that, don't necessarily have a specific visual identity yet that they need to adhere to that can help people run really fast. So I it's obviously going to disrupt the market, but I think it's just about leaning into it, figuring out what works and what doesn't.
It's exciting. We will see. Well, we will see what happens. And I don't think we have time to take more questions, Jillian. But thank you so much for your time and for all your great advice. If you have more questions for Jillian, please send them to us, and we will make sure to forward them.
Thank you so much.
Great. Have a good day. Take care. Wow. Yeah. Fantastic. We're going towards the end here. And I think some of you that logged in a little bit late in the beginning might have missed our event offer today. So we just do a little push for it again. But you have the chance to win a free marketing growth shop tailored for B2B SaaS companies worth 1,500 euros. And you can decide what topic you want to dive into. So do you want to talk about ABM? Do you want to talk about inbound, outbound telemarketing? It's your choice. So don't miss this opportunity. So the first 5 to reply to this offer will get it. So scan the QR code, go to the landing page, or send an email to emma.kotka@brightvision.com. And we have had great feedback on these workshops. Many people actually turned into recurring clients. So that's a nice grade, I think. Good.
Make sure to check it out. All right. So before we finish off the great event we've had today, I would like to highlight another upcoming virtual event opportunity that we are arranging on June 8th. It is a webinar around the power of AI in B2B tech content marketing. So if you're interested in optimizing your B2B content team using AI and want to hear our insights and learnings from testing a range of different tools, you should definitely check it out. So to sign up, you can simply scan the little QR code to see on the screen there. That will take you directly to the sign up page. So with that said, I think it might be time to round off.
2 minutes to go. So you can say that we are on time. Fantastic. So thank you so much to all our great speakers and attendees for great questions. So yeah, I think that was it from our side. If you want to learn more about Brightvision, go to brightvision.com or just contact us. So yeah, you have a wonderful day and take care. And we speak in another virtual event in the future, hopefully.
Great. Have a good one, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.